And big news that NDTV has been tracking. The Indian Army has spoken out on the extent of China's involvement during Operation Sindoor, really spelt it out for the first time. An overwhelming 81% of Pakistan's military hardware is of Chinese origin, with China using the country like a live lab to test its military technology. This is what Army's Deputy Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Rahul R Singh, said today and provided a breakdown of the recent cross-border escalation with Pakistan. According to Lieutenant General Singh, the China-Pakistan defense relationship evolved beyond conventional arms transfer amid concerns that China is treating its close ties with Pakistan as an opportunity for experimentation, including deployment of advanced platforms and surveillance system in real-world conflict scenarios. Earlier, we also spoke to Vishnu Shom and Shiv Arur for more.
Few lessons that I thought I must flag as far as Operation Sindoor is concerned. Firstly, one border, two adversaries. So we saw Pakistan one side, but adversaries were two, and if I would say actually four or three actually. So Pakistan was the front face. We had China providing all possible support, and it's no surprise because if you were to look at statistics, in the last 5 years, 81% of the military hardware that Pakistan is getting is all Chinese, 81% of that. So it's no surprise. And China, of course, the good old dictum, killed by a borrowed knife, 36 stratagems that China talks about, killed by a borrowed knife. So he would rather use the neighbor to cause pain than getting involved in the mud-slinging match on the northern border. So that is what he's seen.
All right, so the Deputy Army Chief really spelling it out over there. Earlier we spoke to Shiv Arur for more.
Pakistan-China nexus is an open secret. That is nothing new. But for the Deputy Chief of the Army Staff to detail, with many layers after Operation Sindoor, not only the complexion of that nexus and that relationship, but the fact that 81% of Chinese weapons are in Pakistan, or Pakistan's 81% of their weapons are Chinese, and that Pakistan's warfare against India during Operation Sindoor was basically a Chinese experiment, and that Pakistan is a laboratory for Chinese weapons, is a very big thing coming from the Deputy Chief of the Army Staff. Remember, this is something that India is very cognizant about, and it is also of interest to the rest of the world, because these are some of the most cutting-edge, advanced Chinese weapons that were used against India, fired at India, used for air defense, things like the HQ-9 air defense system, the PL-15 long-range air-to-air missiles, artillery systems, and so many other Chinese weapons that Pakistan actually used against India, but completely failed to stop the kind of punitive damage that India was able to impose there. So there are very sobering lessons for China from this so-called experiment as described by the Deputy Chief of the Army Staff.
General Singh said that while the ceasefire process was taking place through talks between the Directors General of Military Operations, the Pakistani side seemed to have real-time information on which Indian vectors, in other words, weapon systems, were primed at that particular juncture. In other words, they were getting real-time information on the presence of the positions of Indian weapon systems, whether they were missile systems, whether there were formations of aircraft, whether it was the actual situation at our air bases or something else. The Pakistanis were able to factor that in, the Indian Army believes, on the basis of help from China, number one. And number two, he said that there were not two players who were against India, China and Pakistan, but a third one as well, Turkey. And he did allude to trained personnel, perhaps alluding to a potential involvement of Turkey directly. Why Turkey? Because we do know that Turkish drones were used in surveillance and possibly attack missions over Indian territory.